Hello friends, my name is Ravindra and welcome to our YouTube channel IntExpert. Today we are come from the another new topic, that is the Docker interview question and answer. So today we learn what is Docker. Basically, Docker is an open source platform that automates the deployment, scaling, and management of applications inside lightweight, portable containers. Containers allow application to run consistently across different environments, ensuring the same behavior regardless of where the code is deployed. Then what is Docker container? A Docker container is a lightweight, standalone executable package that includes everything needed to run a piece of software, including the code, runtime, libraries, and the system tools. Containers are isolated from each other and the host system, ensuring consistent execution across environments. Then what is the difference between a Docker image and a Docker container? A Docker image is a read-only template used to create containers. It contains the code, libraries, dependency and instruction for running an application. Then other hand, a Docker container is a running instance of a Docker image. It is isolated execution environment with its own file system, networking and the process space. Then what are the advantages of using Docker? Following are the advantages of the Docker. Basically, first is portability. Docker containers can run on any platform like Linux, Windows, Mac OS without modification. Second is isolation. Containers provides isolated environments for running applications, reducing conflicts between them. Third is efficiency. Docker uses system resources efficiently by sharing the host OS kernels, making containers lightweight. Scalability. Docker makes it easy to scale applications by or orchestrating containers using tools like Kubernet. Consistency. Container ensures that application run consistently across different environments, dev, test and production. And what is Docker Compose? A Docker Compose is a tool for defining and running multi-container Docker application. It allows you to define a multi-container environment using the YAML file dockercompose.yml and then use the Docker Compose CLI command to create, configure and manage the containers. Then how does Docker networking works? Docker provides several networking options to enable communication between containers. First is bridge network, the default network for containers. Containers on the same bridge network can communicate with each other. Host network, the container shares the host network namespace. Third one is overlay network, used in Docker Swarm or multi-host Docker setups for communication between the containers across different Docker hosts. Fourth is network none network, disables networking for the container. Then what is Docker file? A Docker file is a text file that contains a set of instructions to build a Docker image. It defines the environment in which the application will run, specifying the base image, dependency and commands for the installation and configuration. The next is explain the Docker build process. The Docker build process involves creating a Docker image from Docker file. The steps are: the Docker denom reads the instruction in the Docker file, It pulls the base image if it's not already available locally. Each instruction in the Docker file, example run, copy, add, is executed sequentially to build up the image. The image is cached at each step to improve the efficiency of subsequent builds. Once the build is complete, the image is available for the running containers. Then how can you optimize Docker image? Use smaller base images. Use minimal base images like Alpine to reduce the image size. Leverage multi-stage builds. In multi-stage builds, separate the build environment from the runtime environment, which reduces the final image size. Minimize layers. Combine commands like run into the fewer layers to reduce the complexity. Remove unnecessary files. Avoid adding unnecessary files, example temporary build files into the image. Use Docker ignore. Similar to the git ignore, this file tells Docker which files and directory to execute from the build context. What is Docker Swarm? Docker Swarm is a native clustering and orchestration solution for the Docker. It allows you to deploy and manage a cluster of Docker code nodes as a single virtual system. Swarms provide features like service discovery, load balancing, scaling, and automatic failover. What is the difference between Docker Swarm and Kubernetes? Docker Swarm is a simpler native clustering tool. Docker Swarm is a simple native clustering tool to build into Docker. It provides a more straightforward approach to orchestrating Docker containers. Kubernetes is a more feature-rich and complex container orchestration platform that can manage containers across multiple hosts. It offers more extensive features like automated rollouts, self-healing, and a large ecosystem of tools. What is the purpose of the Docker ps command? The Docker ps command lists all the running Docker containers. By default, it shows the container ID, name, status, ports, and the other details. The -a flag can be added to show all containers, including stopped ones. How can you stop a running Docker container? You can stop a running Docker container using the command docker stop, then container ID or container name. This sends a system signal to the container, gracefully stopping it. If the container does not stop within the default timeout, a sign signal is sent. How can persist data in Docker? You can persist data in Docker containers using the volumes. Volumes are stored outside the container's file system and are managed by Docker. They can be shared between the containers and are unaffected by the container restarts. You can create and mount volumes using the docker volume commands. Example, docker run -v my volume path to the data my image. What is the role of the docker exec command? The docker exec command allows you to run a command inside a running container. This is useful for debugging or interacting with the container without stopping it. For example, to run inside a container, docker exec -it container ID or container name bin/. What are Docker tags and how do they work? A Docker tag is a label that is attached to a specific version of Docker image. It allows you to version your images and easily reference different builds. The default tag is latest, but you can assign custom tag like version 1.0 or 1.000. Example, Docker build -t my image version v1. What is the purpose of the Docker ignore file? The Docker ignore file is used to exclude files and directories from being copied into the Docker image during the build process. It works similarly to a git ignore file and helps optimize the build by preventing unnecessary file from being included. What is the difference between copy and add in Docker file? Copy. It simply copies files from the host machine to the container. Add. In addition to copying files, it can also extract tar files and download files from URLs. It is more versatile, but it is generally discouraged for simplicity. What is Docker registry? A Docker registry is a service that stores Docker images. Docker Hub is the default public registry, but you can also use private registries. A registry